The security officer's words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Ma'am, your husband and son just tried to smuggle illegal substances using your luggage." My new husband, David, didn't even flinch when they called my name over the airport speaker, but my son Leo's eyes met his for just a split second, and that look told me everything I needed to know. Standing alone in that sterile security office, watching footage of them carefully placing wrapped packages in my suitcase while I was in the hotel shower, I realized my perfect honeymoon had been the perfect setup. 3 months earlier, David Sterling had swept into my world like something out of a romance novel. Tall, silver-haired, charming as the devil himself. He'd approached me at my neighborhood coffee shop with the kind of confidence that usually made me suspicious. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help noticing you're reading Agatha Christie. A woman of excellent taste." I'd looked up from my book to find the most attractive man I'd seen in years smiling down at me. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have wondered why a successful architect in his 50s was suddenly interested in a widowed school librarian. But after 8 years of lonely evenings and empty dinners for one, his attention felt like sunshine after a long winter. "I'm David," he'd said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "Mind if I join you?" Within 2 weeks, he was bringing me flowers. Within a month, he was cooking dinner in my kitchen while my son Leo watched from the corner, arms crossed, scowling like a teenager instead of the 27-year-old man he was. "Mom, don't you think this is moving too fast?" Leo had asked one evening after David left. "You barely know this guy." I'd smiled, still giddy from David's attention, still floating on the intoxicating feeling of being desired again. "Honey, when you've been alone as long as I have, you don't waste time when something good comes along." Leo's expression had darkened. Something good or someone too good to be true? I dismissed his concerns as overprotectiveness. Leo had been living with me since his breakup with his long-term girlfriend a year ago, helping with the mortgage, being the good son I'd raised him to be, or so I thought. Now staring at that security footage, I realized there had been signs. Late-night phone calls he'd take outside. David showing up at the house when Leo wasn't there, asking casual questions about my routine, my finances, my insurance policies. The way they both seemed so interested in the details of our Barbados honeymoon, especially which hotel we'd stay at, and what our luggage looked like. "Mrs. Green, or is it Mrs. Sterling now?" Officer Rodriguez asked, pulling me back to the present nightmare. "We need to understand how much you knew about this operation." The way she said operation made my blood turn to ice. This wasn't some stupid mistake or moment of poor judgment. This was planned, orchestrated, and I was the unwitting star of the show. "I had no idea," I told Officer Rodriguez, my voice barely steady. "But you need to understand something about my son and my husband." She raised an eyebrow, pen poised over her notepad. "They've been planning this from the beginning, haven't they?" The words tasted bitter as I spoke them, but saying them out loud made everything crystallize with horrifying clarity. Officer Rodriguez nodded slowly. "We've been tracking David Sterling for 8 months. This is his 3rd marriage in 4 years. Same pattern every time. Whirlwind romance, quick wedding, honeymoon to a location known for drug trafficking. Then the wife becomes the unwitting mule." I felt my knees buckle. She quickly guided me to a chair. "Mrs. Green, you're not in trouble. You're a victim. But we need your help to understand how your son fits into this. My son, my baby boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The child I'd sacrificed everything for after his father died when Leo was 10. I'd worked double shifts at the library and tutored on weekends to keep us afloat. I'd given up dating, given up my own dreams, given up everything to make sure Leo had stability, love, a future." "How long?" I whispered. "How long has Leo been working with David?" "Based on our surveillance, we believe they've known each other for at least 7 months before David approached you." 7 months. My perfect love story had been a business transaction. We have footage of them meeting at a restaurant downtown, planning the approach. Your son provided detailed information about your routines, your vulnerabilities, your finances. I thought about all those evenings Leo had seemed so supportive of my relationship with David. "Mom, you deserve happiness," he'd say. "David's good for you. You're glowing. I'd been so grateful for his approval, so relieved that my two favorite men were getting along. The memory made me nauseous now. They played me perfectly, I said, more to myself than to Officer Rodriguez. Your son was promised 30% of whatever they could extract from you. Your life insurance, your house equity, your retirement savings. David specializes in widows and divorcees with assets but limited family connections. She paused, studying my face. Mrs. Green, did you recently update your will or insurance beneficiaries? My heart stopped. 3 weeks after we got engaged, David had suggested we both update our wills to protect each other. He'd even recommended a lawyer, his cousin. He said I'd changed everything. My house, my life insurance, my retirement accounts, everything now went to David with Leo as secondary beneficiary. Oh, God, I breathed. If this smuggling thing had worked, if you'd been arrested, you'd be in federal prison for 20 to life. Your assets would be tied up in legal proceedings for years, eventually reverting to your beneficiaries once you were declared legally unable to manage them. Officer Rodriguez's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Green, they weren't just using you to smuggle drugs. They were setting you up to lose everything, including your freedom. I sat in that sterile chair, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and felt my entire identity crumble. I wasn't a beloved new wife or a treasured mother. I was a mark, a target, a middle-aged woman whose loneliness and trust had made her the perfect victim. But as the shock began to wear off, something else started building in my chest. Something that felt suspiciously like rage. I need to see them, I told Officer Rodriguez. She looked surprised. Mrs. Green, I don't think that's advisable. They're being processed and emotions are running high. But I wasn't asking anymore. I need to see their faces when they realize their plan failed. The steel in my own voice surprised me. 20 minutes later, I stood behind a two-way mirror, watching David pace frantically in an interrogation room while Leo sat slumped in a chair, head in his hands. David was still handsome, still charming. But now I could see what I'd missed before. The calculating coldness behind his practiced smile, the way his eyes constantly assessed and measured. Where's Eleanor? I heard him demand through the intercom. That was my real name, though everyone called me Nora. Hearing him say it with such casual ownership made my skin crawl. She doesn't know anything. She's completely innocent. This is all a misunderstanding. Even now, even caught red-handed, he was spinning the narrative, trying to paint himself as my protector. Leo finally looked up, his face streaked with tears. She's going to hate me forever, he said to David. I told you this was too risky. I told you she wasn't as naive as your other wives. Other wives. The phrase hit me like ice water. How many women had they done this to? How many middle-aged hearts had David broken while emptying bank accounts and destroying lives? Your son seems to have some regrets, Officer Rodriguez observed quietly. I watched Leo wipe his nose with his sleeve, looking every bit the scared little boy I'd comforted through scraped knees and bad dreams. But not enough to stop him from betraying me, I replied. Officer Rodriguez, what happens next? She turned to face me fully. For them, federal drug trafficking charges, conspiracy, fraud. They're looking at serious prison time. For you, she paused. That depends on what you want to do. We've been trying to catch David's operation for 3 years. With your testimony and cooperation, we can not only put him away, but potentially identify other victims, maybe prevent future ones. I thought about other women like me, other lonely widows or divorcees who'd fallen for David's practiced charm, other sons who'd sold out their mothers for 30 pieces of silver. What do I need to do? The question surprised me. I'd never been a vengeful person, never been someone who fought back. But then again, I'd never been betrayed this completely before. Testify. Help us understand the timeline, the manipulation tactics, the financial component. Your marriage to David gives us access to evidence we couldn't get otherwise. Officer Rodriguez paused. Mrs. Green, this won't be easy. Your son will likely try to minimize his involvement, make you feel guilty for pursuing charges. David will try to convince you he really loves you, that he was coerced or threatened. Through the glass, I watched David check his expensive watch, the one I'd helped him pick out for our wedding. He told me it was a family heirloom, but now I wondered how many other wives had heard that same lie. When I married him 4 days ago, I said slowly, I promised to love, honor, and cherish him. I promised for better or worse, for richer or poorer. Officer Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. I understand if you need time to think about. I also promised to be faithful, I interrupted, my voice growing stronger. And faithfulness works both ways. He broke those vows the moment he saw me as a mark instead of a wife. I turned away from the mirror. Decision made. When do we start? The old Nora Green would have made excuses for them, found ways to blame herself, tried to salvage the relationships at any cost. But that woman had died in this airport security office, watching footage of her own son and husband plotting her destruction. The woman walking out of here was someone new entirely. Someone who understood that sometimes the people you love most are the ones capable of hurting you worst. And sometimes, just sometimes, they deserve exactly what they get. The next morning, I sat in Assistant District Attorney Maria Flores' office, wearing the same clothes I'd traveled in because everything else was still evidence. Maria was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of sharp intelligence that reminded me of my best students. Mrs. Green, I've reviewed your case, and I want to be completely honest with you about what you're facing. She spread photographs across her desk, pictures of David with 2 other women, all around my age, all looking blissfully happy on what appeared to be honeymoons. Janet Collins, 57, married David in Reno. Honeymoon in the Dominican Republic. She's currently serving 12 years for drug trafficking. My stomach clenched. Rebecca Young, 54, married him in Key West. Honeymoon in Panama. She died in federal prison 8 months ago from an asthma attack. I stared at Rebecca's photograph. She had kind eyes and graying black hair. Looked like someone who'd volunteered at an animal shelter. She was asthmatic, Maria continued quietly. Prison medical care wasn't adequate. Her family is suing, but that won't bring her back. The weight of what I'd escaped hit me like a freight train. That could have been my obituary. That could have been Leo reading about his mother's death in a federal prison. Your case is different because of your son's involvement. Leo has information about David's network that could help us catch the bigger fish, but he's also facing serious charges himself. The question is, are you prepared for the possibility that your son might go to prison for a very long time? I thought about Leo's face last night, how young and scared he looked. Then I thought about Rebecca Young dying alone in a prison cell because her inhaler wasn't properly managed. Maria, can I ask you something? She nodded. Do you have children? Her expression softened slightly. A son. He's 9. If he were 27 and had betrayed you the way Leo betrayed me, what would you do? Maria was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. I'd want to know why. I'd want to understand how it got to that point, and then I'd have to decide whether justice was more important than family. She paused. But Mrs. Green, that's a choice only you can make. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city courthouse. Somewhere in this building, Leo was probably meeting with a public defender, being advised to minimize his role, to blame David for everything. Part of me hoped he would. Part of me still wanted to protect the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and tell me I was the best mom in the world. But another part of me, a part that had been growing stronger since yesterday, remembered that little boy had grown into a man who'd helped orchestrate my destruction for money. Maria, I need to know something. When David approached me in that coffee shop, acting like it was chance, acting like he was smitten, I turned back to face her. Leo set that up, didn't he? Maria consulted her files. According to our surveillance, Leo had been feeding David information about your routines for weeks. What time you went to the coffee shop, what you ordered, what books you read. David practiced that approach multiple times. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. My own son had studied me like a lab rat, cataloging my habits and weaknesses for a predator. I want to see him, I said suddenly. I want to hear him explain it to my face. Maria looked concerned. Mrs. Green, his lawyer will advise him not to speak with you. And honestly, it might not be the closure you're hoping for. She was probably right, but I needed to look into my son's eyes one more time. I needed to understand if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised, or if that person had been completely consumed by greed and selfishness. Set up the meeting, I said firmly. If he won't talk to me, fine. But I'm going to give him the chance to tell me the truth. After 27 years of being his mother, I think I've earned that much. The jailhouse visiting room smelled like industrial disinfectant and despair. I sat across from Leo, separated by thick plexiglass, speaking through a crackling phone that made his voice sound hollow and distant. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. How far did you want it to go, Leo? My voice was calmer than I felt. Did you think I'd just disappear quietly when you and David were done with me? He finally looked up and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's face before. Genuine fear. Not fear of consequences, but fear of who he'd become. It started as just information, he said, words tumbling out rapidly. David approached me at O'Malley's pub. Said he was interested in you romantically. Wanted to know what you liked. How to make you happy. It seemed sweet. I held up my hand to stop him. When did it stop being sweet, Leo? His shoulders sagged. When he offered me money, real money. 20,000 just for details about your finances, your routine, your vulnerabilities. 20,000. That's what my son's loyalty had cost. And when he offered more money to help with the smuggling operation, Leo's face crumpled. 50,000, Mom. He promised me 50,000 if I helped set it up properly. Do you know what that kind of money would mean for me? I thought about the college tuition I'd sacrificed my retirement savings for. The car payments I'd helped him with when he was unemployed. The down payment on his first apartment that had come from my emergency fund. I know exactly what 50,000 means, Leo. I've given you more than that over the years, and I never asked you to betray me for it. You don't understand, he said, frustration bleeding into his voice. You have the house, your pension, your savings. You're set for life. I'm 27, single, living in your basement, working freelance jobs that barely pay the bills. I needed something, Mom. I needed a chance. So you decided to destroy mine? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't regret them. Leo, do you know what would have happened if their plan had worked? Do you know about David's other wives? His face went pale. What other wives? I told him about Janet and Rebecca. Watched him realize that his get-rich-quick scheme would have resulted in his mother's death or imprisonment. Rebecca Young died in prison, Leo. She had asthma and the prison medical system failed her. Is that what you wanted for me? 50,000 in exchange for your mother's life? He was crying now. Ugly sobs that shook his whole body. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the other women. David told me you'd just get probation, maybe community service. He said wealthy women never do real time for first offenses. The casual manipulation in David's strategy didn't surprise me, but it added another layer of revulsion to the whole situation. Leo, I need you to understand something, I said, my voice steady despite the tears running down my own cheeks. I love you. I will always love you because you're my son. But love doesn't mean trust, and it doesn't mean consequences don't matter. He looked up sharply. You're going to testify against me. I'm going to tell the truth about David, about his operation, about how you helped him target me. I paused, choosing my words carefully. What you do with the opportunity to cooperate with the prosecution is up to you. But Leo, our relationship as it was, that's over. The mother who would have sacrificed everything to protect you. She died yesterday when I watched that security footage. He slammed his hand against the plexiglass. So that's it? 27 years of being your son, and you're just going to throw it away? I stood up slowly, my decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. You threw it away the moment you decided I was worth more to you as a victim than as a mother. I hung up the phone and walked away, leaving Leo shouting my name through the glass. In the parking lot, I sat in the rental car Maria's office had provided and felt something I hadn't experienced in years, not grief or anger or betrayal, though all those emotions were still there. What I felt was freedom. Freedom from the burden of protecting people who were willing to destroy me. Freedom from the obligation to forgive the unforgivable just because we shared DNA. My phone buzzed with a text from David, somehow smuggled out through another inmate. Nora, please come see me. I can explain everything. What we have is real. I deleted the message without reading it twice. Then I started the car and drove toward my new life, leaving the wreckage of my old one exactly where it belonged, behind me. Tomorrow, I would start building something new. Tonight, I was simply going to appreciate being alive, free, and finally awake to what I was actually worth. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to finding out who I could become when I stopped trying to save people who were determined to drown me.